The airline staff forced the CEO out of his first-class seat for a more important passenger. One phone call later, they realized they'd just made the biggest mistake of their careers. The morning sun cuts through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Denver International Airport. Terminal B buzzes with the familiar chaos of early business travelers, rolling suitcases, clicking against polished floors, coffee shop orders being barked out, gate announcements echoing overhead. Among the sea of sharp suits and designer luggage walks Darius Freeman, a man who seems completely out of place. His gray sweater hangs loose over a noticeable potbelly, salt and pepper hair slightly disheveled, worn jeans, scuffed sneakers that have seen better days. He carries a simple black backpack, no expensive briefcase, no first-class luggage tags, nothing that screams success or importance. But here's what nobody knows about Darius Freeman. 23 years ago, he was sleeping in his car outside a McDonald's, surviving on dollar menu items and dreams that seemed impossible. His mother had cleaned offices at night to put food on the table. His father left when Darius was 12, calling him too soft for the real world. Every teacher, every guidance counselor, every so-called mentor told him the same thing: be realistic. People like you don't build empires. People like you. Those three words became the fuel that built Freeman Airlines from a single leased plane to a billion-dollar empire spanning 3 continents. Today, Darius Freeman is the CEO and founder of the very airline he's about to board. But nobody, not the gate agents, not the flight crew, not the passengers, has any idea who he is. He prefers it that way. At gate 47, Darius approaches the counter where Vanessa Grant, a polished gate agent in her late 20s, is processing first-class passengers. Her smile is practiced, professional, the kind reserved for people who matter. She glances at Darius as he hands over his boarding pass, and for just a split second, her smile falters. Her eyes dart from his casual clothes to the first-class designation on his ticket. "Mr. Freeman?" she reads, her tone carrying the slightest hint of confusion. "Seat 12A, first class?" She looks at him again, then at the ticket, as if double-checking that there hasn't been some mistake. "Is there a problem?" Darius asks quietly. His voice is calm, unassuming, not the commanding tone you'd expect from someone who signs paychecks worth millions. "Oh, no problem at all," Vanessa recovers quickly, but her smile remains strained. "Enjoy your flight." As Darius walks down the jet bridge, Vanessa turns to her colleague, Brianna Scott, a senior gate agent with 15 years of experience and opinions to match. "Did you see that guy?" Vanessa whispers. Brianna glances at Darius's retreating figure. "What about him?" "First class, seat 12A. That's our premium section." Brianna raises an eyebrow. So look at him. Does he look like first class to you?" It's a comment that hangs in the air like toxic smoke, the kind of assumption that reveals everything about how people judge worth by appearance, by clothes, by the size of someone's wallet chain. What they don't know is that Darius has been conducting these little experiments for years, flying coach on his own planes, eating in employee cafeterias unrecognized, walking through airports where his company's logo hangs on every wall, invisible to the very people who work for him. It's not about ego. It's about truth. The first-class cabin of Flight 1847 is a study of understated luxury. Leather seats that cost more than most people's monthly rent, overhead bins spacious enough for designer luggage, ambient lighting that promises comfort and exclusivity. Darius finds his seat, 12A, window side, and settles in with the quiet contentment of someone who's earned his place there, even if nobody else recognizes it. Around him, the first-class cabin fills with the usual suspects: business executives barking into phones about quarterly projections, a woman in a Chanel suit scrolling through emails on her iPad, a man in an expensive watch checking his stock portfolio. They belong here, their presence announces. They've paid for this privilege, earned the status. Darius pulls out a worn paperback, a biography of Howard Schultz, and begins reading. No phone calls, no urgent emails, just a man enjoying a moment of peace before takeoff. But peace, as Darius is about to learn, is a luxury even money can't always buy. In the galley, flight attendant Chloe Johnson is reviewing the passenger manifest with her colleague, Emma Sullivan. Chloe, 26, has been flying for 4 years and considers herself an expert at reading passengers, who tips well, who'll cause problems, who really belongs in premium cabins. Full flight today, Emma notes, scanning the list. Always is on the Denver-Boston route. Lot of important people. Her eyes stop on a name, Freeman, Darius, seat 12A. Something nags at her about that passenger. She's seen him board, seen him settle into one of their most expensive seats, and something just doesn't fit. "Hey, Em," she says, lowering her voice, "did you see the guy in 12A?" Emma glances toward the cabin. "Gray sweater?" "Yeah. Does he seem, I don't know, right for first class?" It's a question that should never be asked, but in an industry where assumptions run deep and prejudices hide behind professional smiles, it's asked more often than anyone would care to admit. Emma shrugs. Maybe he's using miles or got an upgrade. But Chloe's mind is already working. She's seen this before. Passengers who somehow end up in seats they can't really afford, taking up space that should go to real first-class travelers. As the plane prepares for takeoff, she makes a mental note to keep an eye on 12A. The important passenger. 20 minutes into the flight, the seatbelt sign clicks off, and the cabin settles into that familiar rhythm of high-altitude service. Darius continues reading, occasionally glancing out the window at the patchwork of fields below. That's when Trevor White makes his appearance. Trevor is everything Darius isn't. Tall, impeccably dressed in a suit that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary. Silver hair styled to perfection. He carries himself with the kind of confidence that comes from never being told no. He's also late. Trevor missed his original flight due to a business emergency, code for a golf meeting that ran long, and his assistant had to work miracles to get him on this plane. But Trevor White doesn't do coach ever. He strides down the aisle like he owns the aircraft, scanning the first-class cabin with the calculating eyes of someone used to getting what he wants. His gaze lands on Darius, sitting quietly in 12A, and something in Trevor's expression hardens. He approaches Chloe, who's preparing beverage service in the galley. "Excuse me," Trevor says, his voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to instant compliance. "I need to speak with whoever's in charge." Chloe straightens. "I'm the senior flight attendant on this flight. How can I help you?" Trevor glances back at Darius, then leans closer to Chloe. "I'm Trevor White, White Industries. We have a significant corporate account with this airline." He pauses, letting the weight of his importance settle. "I need seat 12A." Chloe blinks. "Sir, that seat is occupied by another passenger." "I understand that," Trevor says, his patience clearly limited. "But I'm asking you to handle it. The passenger in that seat, well, let's just say I don't think he'll mind moving to coach." The request hangs in the air like a loaded gun. This is the moment where everything changes, where assumptions meet reality, where the airline's real values, not the ones printed in training manuals, but the ones lived out in real situations, are about to be revealed. Chloe looks at Trevor, then at Darius, then back at Trevor. Let me speak with him," she says finally. Chloe approaches seat 12A with the nervous energy of someone about to do something they know isn't right, but feel pressured to do anyway. Darius looks up from his book, offering a gentle smile. "Yes." "Sir, I'm sorry to bother you," Chloe begins, her professional smile not quite reaching her eyes. "We have a situation where we need to accommodate another passenger in first class. Would you be willing to move to an available seat in coach?" The question is posed politely, but its implications are devastating. Move to coach. Give up your seat. You don't really belong here anyway.
Darius closes his book slowly, his finger marking his place. For a moment, he says nothing, just looks at Chloe with eyes that have seen this kind of discrimination more times than he cares to count. "Is there a mechanical issue with this seat?" he asks quietly. "No, sir." "A safety concern?" "No, sir." "Then why exactly are you asking me to move?" Chloe glances back toward Trevor, who's watching the exchange with barely concealed impatience. The other first-class passengers have started to notice the conversation, their attention drawn by the unusual request. "We have a priority passenger who needs this specific seat," Chloe explains, the words sounding hollow even as she speaks them. Darius nods slowly. "I see. And what makes this passenger more of a priority than me?" It's a simple question that cuts to the heart of everything wrong with this situation. Chloe hesitates, because the truth that Trevor looks more important, that his clothes and demeanor scream wealth and status, while Darius appears ordinary, sounds even worse when put into words. "He has significant business with our airline," she says finally. "And you've determined that I don't?" The question hangs in the air. Around them, other passengers are starting to murmur. Someone pulls out a phone. In today's world, every confrontation is potentially viral, every injustice one social media post away from becoming a corporate nightmare. But none of that matters to Darius right now. What matters is the principle. The same principle that drove him to build an airline that was supposed to be different, better, more fair. "Sir," Chloe continues, her voice taking on a slightly firmer tone, "we're asking for your cooperation here." Darius looks at her for a long moment. Then, to everyone's surprise, he smiles. "Of course," he says quietly, "I understand completely." He reaches into his backpack and pulls out his phone. "I just need to make one quick call first." The call that changes everything. Darius dials a number from memory. The phone rings once. "Freeman Airlines, Executive Office, this is Aaliyah Torres." "Aaliyah, it's Darius." There's a pause. Aaliyah Torres has been Darius Freeman's executive assistant for 8 years. She knows his voice, knows his schedule, and knows that he's supposed to be on flight 1847 right now. "Mr. Freeman, is everything all right? Aren't you supposed to be—" "I'm on the plane," Hunter gently. "Flight 1847, and I need you to do something for me." Around him, the first-class cabin has gone quiet. Chloe stands frozen, still waiting for him to hang up and move to coach. Trevor White drums his fingers impatiently on the armrest of an empty seat. Other passengers lean in, sensing that something significant is happening, but not quite understanding what. "I need you to conference in legal, HR, and operations, and I need you to start preparing termination paperwork." Chloe's face goes pale. "Sir? You need to end your call," she whispers urgently. Darius holds up one finger, a gentle gesture that nonetheless commands attention. "The crew on flight 1847 has just asked me to give up my first-class seat to accommodate what they call a priority passenger. I'd like a full investigation into how this decision was made and who authorized discrimination against a passenger based on their appearance." The word discrimination ripples through the cabin like electricity. Trevor White, who had been checking his watch, suddenly looks up sharply. "Furthermore," Darius continues, "I want to know how a passenger who missed his original flight was able to board this aircraft and immediately demand the seat of another paying customer." Chloe's hands are shaking now. She's starting to understand that this isn't just any passenger. The calm authority in his voice, the way he's speaking about company policy, the fact that he has the direct number to what sounds like the airline's executive office. Who are you?" she whispers. Darius looks up at her, phone still pressed to his ear. "I'm Darius Freeman," he says simply. "I own this airline." The silence that follows is deafening. Trevor White's mouth falls open. The businessman across the aisle stops typing on his laptop. The woman in the Chanel suit looks up from her iPad. Even passengers in rows behind first class, who have been straining to hear the conversation, go completely quiet. Chloe's face cycles through a spectrum of emotions: belief, recognition, horror, and finally, pure panic. "Mr. Freeman, I mean, you didn't recognize me." Darius finishes for her. "That's fine. I don't expect you to. But what I do expect is that every passenger on my airline is treated with dignity and respect, regardless of what they're wearing or how important they appear to be." He turns his attention back to the phone. "Aaliyah, are you getting all this?" "Every word, sir. Should I connect me to Captain Martinez? I want to know if he's aware that his crew is asking passengers to give up paid seats based on arbitrary determinations of who deserves them more." In the cockpit, Captain Isaiah Martinez receives the call with growing alarm. He's been flying for Freeman Airlines for 12 years, ever since Darius personally recruited him from a struggling regional carrier. He knows his boss's voice, knows his values, and knows that whatever is happening in the cabin right now is about to become a career-defining moment for everyone involved. "Mr. Freeman, I wasn't aware of any seating issues. Let me—" "Don't worry about it, Captain. Just focus on getting us to Boston safely. We'll handle this on the ground." Darius ends the call and looks around the first-class cabin. Every eye is on him. Trevor White, who moments earlier had been demanding Darius's seat, now looks like he wants to disappear into the aircraft's floor. "Mr. White," Darius says, his voice still calm, "I believe you wanted this seat?" Trevor swallows hard. That is, there's been a misunderstanding." "No misunderstanding," Darius replies. "You saw someone you didn't think belonged in first class, and you assumed you could simply take their seat. The question is, what does that say about how you view other people?" As word spreads through the cabin, whispered conversations, furious texting, passengers Googling Darius Freeman, Freeman Airlines, the atmosphere becomes electric with tension. Emma Sullivan, the other flight attendant, approaches Chloe with wide eyes. "Is it true?" she whispers. "Is he really?" "He's the owner," Chloe confirms, her voice barely audible. "Oh God, Emma, we're fired. We're so fired." But Darius isn't finished. He stands up and, despite his unassuming appearance, commands the attention of the entire first-class cabin. "Ladies and gentlemen," he begins, "I apologize for the disturbance, but what you've just witnessed is exactly why I occasionally fly on my own planes unrecognized." He pauses, letting his words sink in. "This airline was built on the principle that everyone deserves to be treated with respect, that your worth isn't determined by your clothes, your appearance, or how much money you spend. But clearly, we've lost sight of that mission." A passenger in row 2 raises her hand tentatively. "What happens now?" Darius considers the question. "Now, we remember why we're here. Not to judge each other, but to serve each other. Not to create hierarchies of worthiness, but to create experiences that honor every person who trusts us with their journey." The remainder of the flight passes in surreal quiet. Chloe and Emma continue their service, but every interaction is strained with the knowledge that their careers are hanging by a thread. Trevor White spends the flight hunched over his laptop, probably crafting apology emails and damage control strategies for his own company's relationship with Freeman Airlines. Other passengers alternate between stealing glances at Darius, who has returned to reading his book as if nothing happened, and frantically researching the man who just turned their routine flight into a masterclass in leadership and accountability. When the plane lands in Boston, Darius is the first to stand. But instead of rushing off like most business travelers, he takes his time, making eye contact with each crew member.
"Chloe," he says as he reaches the galley, "Emma, you'll be hearing from HR within the next 24 hours. I want you to know that this isn't about punishment, it's about learning. The question is whether you're willing to learn." As he walks off the plane, Aaliyah Torres is waiting for him at the gate, tablet in hand and a look of barely controlled urgency on her face.
"Sir, the story is already online," she says, falling into step beside him. "A passenger live tweeted the whole thing. It's trending." Darius nods. "Expected? What's the sentiment?" "Mixed. Some people are calling you a hero for standing up to discrimination. Others are saying you should have handled it privately. And what do you think?" Aaliyah considers this. "I think you did exactly what the company needed you to do, but the cleanup is going to be significant." Within hours, the hashtag #SeatGate is trending across all platforms. The passenger who filmed parts of the encounter has posted a Twitter thread that's been shared thousands of times. Thread: "I just witnessed the most incredible thing on my flight. A man in a gray sweater was asked to give up his first-class seat for a more important passenger. Turns out he owns the airline. What happened next will restore your faith in justice." The responses pour in. This is what real leadership looks like. CEOs who actually understand what their employees are doing. Plot twist of the century. Imagine discriminating against your own boss. But why was he flying coach casual in first class? Seems like he was setting them up. Maybe he was just trying to fly like a normal person. Why should he have to dress a certain way to deserve respect? The debate rages across social media. News outlets pick up the story. And within 24 hours, Darius Freeman finds himself at the center of a national conversation about discrimination, leadership, and corporate responsibility. Back at Freeman Airlines headquarters in Denver, the executive conference room has become a war room. The mahogany table is covered with laptops, tablets, and printouts of social media posts. The wall-mounted monitors display real-time sentiment analysis, stock prices, and news coverage. Keisha Daniels leads the investigation with military precision. She's interviewed the crew, reviewed company policies, and analyzed the decision-making process that led to the confrontation. "The facts are clear," she reports to the assembled executives. "Flight attendant Johnson and gate agent Grant made assumptions based on passenger appearance. They violated company policy, federal anti-discrimination guidelines, and basic human decency." Anthony Patel, Chief Operating Officer, reviews the financial implications. Stock price is actually up 2%. The public seems to be responding positively to Darius's handling of the situation, but we need to be careful about how we frame the consequences. Logan Chen, head of legal, has concerns. "If we fire them immediately, it looks like we're throwing employees under the bus to protect our image. If we don't take action, it looks like we condone discrimination." The room falls silent as they consider the impossible balance between justice and mercy, accountability and forgiveness. "What does Darius want?" someone asks. Keisha checks her notes. "He wants them to understand why what they did was wrong. He wants systemic changes to prevent it from happening again, and he wants the airline to recommit to its founding values. So not just punishment, transformation." At her apartment in Denver, Chloe Johnson sits on her couch, laptop open, scrolling through the endless stream of commentary about her actions. Her phone has been ringing non-stop. Reporters, friends, family members who saw her name in the news. She reads the comments with growing horror. Flight attendant Chloe Johnson should be ashamed of herself. This is exactly what's wrong with customer service today. She profiled a passenger based on his appearance. Absolutely disgusting. But scattered among the criticism are a few voices of understanding. We've all made assumptions about people. The question is whether we learn from our mistakes. Everyone deserves a second chance if they're willing to do the work. Chloe's roommate, Natalie Kim, sits beside her. "You could fight this, you know. Get a lawyer. Say you were just following training or company culture." Chloe shakes her head. "I wasn't following training. I was following prejudice. And the worst part is, I didn't even realize I was doing it." She closes the laptop and looks at Natalie. "I need to figure out how to make this right." 3 days after the flight,
Chloe and Emma sit in a conference room at Freeman Airlines headquarters. Across from them are Keisha Daniels, Anthony Patel, and a representative from the company's Diversity and Inclusion Department. The room is stark, professional, intimidating. Everything about it says, your career is on the line. But then Darius Freeman walks in. He's wearing the same type of casual clothes, khakis, a button shirt, nothing that screams CEO. He sits down across from them and folds his hands on the table. Chloe, Emma, thank you for coming. His tone is neither accusatory nor dismissive. It's simply human. Mr. Freeman, Chloe begins, her voice shaky, I want to apologize. He holds up a hand. Before we get to apologies, I want to understand something. Can you walk me through your thought process that day? Help me understand how you reached the decision to ask me to move. It's not the question Chloe expected. She'd prepared for anger, for lectures about company policy and discrimination law. She hadn't prepared for genuine curiosity about her reasoning. I saw you bored, she begins hesitantly. And you looked, your clothes were casual, and most of our first-class passengers dress more formally. Go on. And then Mr. White approached me. He's flown with us many times. He has status with the airline, and he said he needed the seat. So you made a calculation. You weighed what you saw as his importance against what you saw as mine, Darius observes. Yes, sir. And how did you determine relative importance? The question hangs in the air because the answer that she judged based on appearance, on assumptions, on stereotypes she didn't even realize she held, sounds even worse when spoken out loud. I made assumptions, and they were wrong. What happens next surprises everyone in the room. Darius leans back in his chair and nods thoughtfully. You know, Chloe, I've been on the other side of this conversation more times than I can count. When I was building this company, I'd walk into meetings where people assumed I was the janitor, the delivery guy, anybody except the person they were supposed to be meeting with. He pauses, letting the personal revelation settle. The difference was, I had the power to correct those assumptions. Most people don't. Most people just have to accept being judged, being dismissed, being told they don't belong. Chloe's eyes fill with tears. I never thought of it that way. Here's what I want you to understand, Darius continues. This isn't about punishing you for one mistake. It's about recognizing that this mistake reveals something deeper, assumptions we all carry, biases we all have, judgments we all make without even realizing it. He looks at both women. The question isn't whether you made a mistake. The question is what you're going to do with the knowledge that you're capable of making mistakes like this. Keisha Daniels opens a folder and slides documents across the table. Based on our investigation, she begins, the company has decided not to terminate your employment. Both Chloe and Emma exhale in relief. However, Keisha continues, you will both be suspended without pay for 2 weeks. During that time, you'll complete comprehensive sensitivity training, unconscious bias education, and customer service retraining. She slides another document across. Additionally, you'll participate in a mentorship program with employees from diverse backgrounds, and you'll contribute 40 hours of community service to organizations that combat discrimination. Emma speaks for the first time. What about our records? Will this follow us? Anthony Patel answers, that depends on you. If you complete the program successfully, demonstrate genuine learning and growth, and show consistent improvement in your interactions with passengers, this will be noted as a learning opportunity rather than a disciplinary action. But, Darius adds, if similar incidents occur in the future with either of you, the consequences will be immediate termination, no second chances. The incident on Flight 1847 becomes a catalyst for sweeping changes throughout Freeman Airlines. Within a month, the company announces a comprehensive overhaul of its training programs.
New employee orientation now includes a full day dedicated to unconscious bias, with real-world scenarios and role-playing exercises designed to help staff recognize their own assumptions. Customer service training is revamped to emphasize dignity and respect for all passengers, regardless of appearance, behavior, or perceived status. Management protocols are established for handling passenger disputes with clear escalation procedures that prevent individual employees from making discriminatory decisions in the heat of the moment. Anonymous reporting systems are implemented so employees can report discrimination without fear of retaliation. But perhaps most importantly, Darius institutes what becomes known as the Gray Sweater Program, regular undercover flights by executives and managers to experience the airline from a passenger's perspective. The program's motto, printed on cards carried by every employee, is simple: every passenger is someone's most important person. 6 months later, Chloe Johnson stands in the galley of another Freeman Airlines flight, this time serving passengers on the Denver-Chicago route. She's completing her service with a quiet efficiency that speaks to genuine change rather than mere compliance. As she offers beverages to a passenger in 14C, a young black man in a hoodie and jeans, she makes eye contact, smiles genuinely, and asks, "What can I get for you today, sir?" No assumptions, no judgments, just service. The passenger, Caleb Robinson, is actually a Freeman Airlines pilot, deadheading home after completing his certification. He's also the person assigned to observe Chloe's interactions as part of the ongoing monitoring program. Later in his report, Caleb writes, "Flight attendant Johnson demonstrated consistent professionalism and respect with all passengers, regardless of age, race, dress, or apparent socioeconomic status. Her interactions suggest genuine internalization of anti-bias training rather than mere surface compliance." The story of Flight 1847 doesn't end when the plane lands or when the employees complete their training. It becomes a case study taught in business schools, a reference point for corporate responsibility discussions, and a reminder that leadership moments often come disguised as ordinary encounters. Other airlines begin implementing their own undercover leadership programs. Corporate executives across industries start questioning their own assumptions about employees and customers. Social media conversations about discrimination become more nuanced, focusing on systemic change rather than individual punishment. Trevor White, the passenger who triggered the entire incident, becomes an unlikely advocate for change. His company, White Industries, partners with Freeman Airlines on a diversity initiative, and Trevor frequently speaks at conferences about the dangers of unconscious bias in business settings. "I learned that privilege isn't just about what you have," he tells audiences. "It's about what you assume you deserve and what you assume others don't deserve." 2 years after the incident, Darius Freeman is invited to speak at a leadership conference in Boston. The venue is packed. Executives, entrepreneurs, students, and activists, all eager to hear from the CEO who turned a moment of discrimination into a movement for change. As he takes the stage, Darius looks out at the audience and sees something that gives him hope. Diversity not just in race and gender, but in dress, in age, in apparent economic status. The kind of crowd that suggests people are being judged by their ideas rather than their appearance. 2 years ago, he begins, I was asked to give up my airplane seat for someone more important. Today I want to talk about why that question, who is more important, is the wrong question entirely. He pauses, making eye contact with audience members across the spectrum of human diversity. The right question, he says, is how do we create a world where everyone is treated as important? The applause is thunderous, but Darius isn't finished. Because here's what I learned that day. Change doesn't happen when we punish people for their biases. Change happens when we help people recognize their biases and choose to do better.
In the audience, Chloe Johnson takes notes furiously. She's no longer a flight attendant. 6 months after completing her retraining, she was promoted to the Freeman Airlines training department, where she helps develop curriculum for new employees. Her specialty? Unconscious bias recognition. "I tell every new hire the same thing," she explains during a breakout session later that day. "We all have biases. The question isn't whether you have them, it's whether you're willing to acknowledge them and work to overcome them." She shares her story, the mistakes, the consequences, the learning process, with unflinching honesty. "I was the person who asked the CEO of the company to give up his seat because I didn't think he looked important enough. If I can change, anyone can change." The story of Flight 1847 becomes a reminder that progress isn't a destination, it's a practice. Freeman Airlines continues to struggle with bias, discrimination, and the challenge of serving diverse passengers with diverse needs. But the difference now is awareness. When issues arise, and they do, they're addressed quickly, openly, and with genuine commitment to learning rather than damage control. The Gray Sweater program expands beyond airlines. Restaurants, hotels, retail chains, and service companies across industries begin sending executives into their own operations undercover, not to catch employees making mistakes, but to understand the customer experience from ground level. The movement spreads internationally. Gray Sweater moments become shorthand for leadership encounters that reveal organizational values through individual actions. As the years pass, Darius Freeman reflects on what the incident really taught him. It wasn't that his employees were bad people. It was that good people could make bad decisions when operating within systems that didn't actively promote equity and inclusion. The real lesson wasn't about punishment or public shaming. It was about creating structures that support people's better angels rather than their unconscious biases. Culture, he often tells his leadership team, isn't what we say in our mission statement, it's what we do when we think nobody important is watching. The irony, of course, is that somebody important is always watching. Every customer, every employee, every person whose life is touched by the organization's choices. Today, if you fly Freeman Airlines, you'll notice small differences that speak to big changes. Gate agents who make eye contact with every passenger, regardless of their destination or ticket class. Flight attendants who offer the same warmth to the person in 32F as they do to the person in 2A. Pilots who take a moment to walk through the cabin before takeoff, connecting with passengers as human beings rather than cargo to be transported. These aren't revolutionary changes, they're simple acts of recognition and respect. But they're also the building blocks of a culture that sees every person as worthy of dignity. As Darius concludes his speech in Boston, he looks out at an audience that includes CEOs and janitors, students and retirees, people from every background imaginable. "Here is my challenge to you," he says. "Go back to your organizations, your communities, your families, and ask yourself, when was the last time I made an assumption about someone based on their appearance? When was the last time I judged someone's worth by their clothes, their accent, their age, or where they came from?" He pauses, letting the weight of self-reflection settle over him. And then ask yourself the harder question: what am I going to do differently tomorrow? The audience files out slowly, many lingering to continue discussions that began during the presentation. Business cards are exchanged between people who might never have spoken to each other in different circumstances. A young woman in ripped jeans shakes hands with a banker in a three-piece suit. They're planning a mentorship program. An elderly janitor from the conference center finds himself in deep conversation with a tech entrepreneur about dignity in the workplace. These connections, these moments of recognition across artificial divides, are Darius Freeman's true legacy. That evening, Darius sits in his hotel room still wearing the same type of unremarkable clothes that started this journey. He opens his laptop and begins typing an email to his employees. Today I was reminded why we do this work. Not for the profits, not for the recognition, not even for the success we do it. Because every person who trusts us with their journey deserves to be seen, respected, and valued. The gray sweater incident taught us that change begins with a single choice, the choice to see others as fully human, regardless of how they appear to us in any given moment. Tomorrow, when you go to work, remember, you have the power to make someone's day better or worse. You have the ability to include or exclude. You have the opportunity to judge or to serve. Choose service. Choose inclusion. Choose to see the humanity in everyone you encounter. That's not just good business. That's good life. Years later, business schools teach the Freeman principle, the idea that authentic leadership reveals itself not in boardrooms or press conferences, but in every...
Trevor White's daughter, now a young professional, carries a reminder in her wallet, a small card with the words, "Judge less, serve more." It's become her personal motto, shaped by her father's transformation after his encounter with a man in a gray sweater. The story of Flight 1847 resonates because it reveals a universal truth. We all have the capacity for both judgment and grace. We all carry biases. We all make assumptions. But we also all have the power to choose differently. In airports around the world, in offices and schools and community centers, in every place where human beings interact with human beings, there are gray sweater moments happening every day. Moments where someone's worth is being evaluated based on surface appearances. Moments where dignity is either extended or withheld. Moments where the choice to see fully, to serve genuinely, to respect unconditionally can change everything. As passengers continue to board flights, as employees continue to serve customers, as human beings continue to encounter each other in all the complexity of daily life, Darius Freeman's question echoes. What does it mean to treat every person as someone's most important person? The answer isn't found in policy manuals or training programs, though those help. The answer is found in the split second when we choose to see a fellow human being rather than a category, a person rather than an assumption, a story rather than a stereotype. The answer is found in remembering that behind every gray sweater, behind every ordinary appearance, there might be an extraordinary story. But more importantly, there's always an extraordinary humanity deserving of our respect. Today, if you happen to find yourself on a Freeman Airlines flight, you might notice something different about the experience. It's not flashy or obvious, it's woven into the fabric of every interaction. The gate agent who looks up from her computer to make eye contact when you approach. The flight attendant who asks how your day is going and actually listens to the answer. The pilot who takes a moment to chat with passengers during boarding, treating each person as an individual rather than cargo. These aren't policy requirements, they're cultural expressions of a deeper truth, learned from a man in a gray sweater who refused to accept that some people matter more than others. And somewhere, on some flight, Darius Freeman might be sitting quietly in his seat, still wearing unremarkable clothes, still reading a paperback book, still believing that the most important leadership happens when people think no one important is watching, because he knows something that took him a lifetime to learn and a single flight to prove. In a world that constantly tries to rank and categorize human worth, true leadership means insisting that every person has infinite value. Every passenger is someone's most important person. Every story matters. Every human being deserves dignity. The gray sweater was never about the clothes. It was about seeing clearly.